So my lived experience with substance use started fairly early in life. For a long time growing up, I had this overwhelming feeling that I didn't really fit in with my peer group, and I didn't really know what that was, what was really different about me. And just growing up, a kid in a small town, when I started to figure out that it had something, that I was a queer kid in a space that wasn't really like queer friendly, right? When faced with this realization that there's this thing that's very much a part of you, sets you apart in such a big way, you really you really start to learn to kind of loathe yourself, right? There were some things that were considered masculine that I kind of could identify with, right? Like, it was a very masculine thing to do to consume alcohol, right? And so that was kind of my first venture into substance use was through alcohol, because it did help me. I found a real sense of belonging amongst these other people that were using substances, right? We all had that feeling that we were kind of broken people, right? And so we had this kind of sense of community amongst ourselves, right? And then as I started to grow older, within that scene of people that were using substances, I was introduced to new substances. Over time, I became polysubstance dependent, right? So it was alcohol, it was benzodiazepines, it was opioids. I was drinking every weekend by middle school. One of the things was I developed this reputation as this young kid that was, wild and crazy and would try anything, and that became so embedded as part of my identity as this guy that just parties really hard. That continued on into my 20s, and then kind of found a way to make a living off of that. I started working in bars and bartending and go-go dancing and promoting parties and things like that. That was kind of who I became, I was the guy that would take the most shots, or when I was on methamphetamines, I was always the guy that would stay up the most days. The biggest negative outcomes was that I started going to jail fairly frequently. So one of the times that I got arrested, it didn't seem like a big deal at the time. It seemed like just another, but this time it was fairly serious, and so I was looking at doing some serious time, and I had also become kind of a liability to the people that were employing me at this point, because I'd really taken it over the edge. Instead of facing that time and losing my kids to the system, we just packed everything up and went on the run. At that time I was still opioid dependent. I was leaving a space that didn't have MAT services. I had to go and detox cold turkey. That was some of the worst pain I've experienced in my life, was that. And so I had to really ask myself, how did I get here, and what can I change about my life to do something different, right? Because my kids very clearly deserve better. And I started working in just grassroots community activism. Shortly after that, I got the position as the shelter director for one of our shelter programs, and then became the executive director after that for a shelter program for families with minor children. Finding that purpose, right, and finding that motivation, just something to keep you going, something that keeps you on that path. If you want to make that change, then you have to, completely sever your ties with some of the people that you have some of your closest relationships with. We loved each other, and we cared about each other deeply, but it is very true that when you want to make that change, that you do have to sever those ties. And so it was okay, now I need to make the decisions based on what's going to cause the least amount of suffering, not just for me, but for all of the people around me. And so when I did decide to make that change, for me it was when I started studying Buddhism. So I took that same energy, and I'm going to party the hardest, and it was like, how can I do the most good? And how can I channel that energy into doing something different? I was getting the same type of validation. I was getting the same type of attention, but from a completely different population or completely different demographic. Of course, my family's been incredibly supportive, right? Because they've all wanted to see me recover, and now they have, and they've been incredibly supportive along the journey, as supportive as they could be. But since then, I've learned that just because I don't remember it doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? Just having that conversation with them and learning about the things that I'd done was incredibly heartbreaking, but it was necessary, because when you have to make those direct apologies to the people that you've hurt. I'm really lucky that they do want to spend that time with me, right? And that they have forgiven me for my actions back then. So just understanding that, I have so much joy in my life now. I have a home that I love, and these are just things that I know I can't have and I can't sustain if I go back down that road. Sharing my journey, sharing my experiences, and working with people to help them understand what people who are experiencing substance use disorder are going through, that is something that I'm good at. Having the ability to show people that it's possible and it's worthwhile is really fulfilling and gives me purpose, right?